Welcome. We're going to dive into a really surprising and high-stakes shift in global power today. What's happening between India and China right now? Well, it's way more than just headlines. It's a geopolitical gamble that could totally reshape the future of trade in Asia. So it all seems to kick off with this pretty incredible claim that President Trump's policies are actually pushing India and China, two historic rivals, mind you, closer together. Now, that sounds completely counterintuitive, right? But let's unpack this, because it really sets the stage for a fascinating story about money, power, and strategy. And that really brings us to the core question here. After years of tension, border disputes, and some serious economic rivalry, why on earth is Beijing suddenly rolling out the red carpet for New Delhi? Okay, let's get into it and figure out what's really going on behind the scenes. To really understand this, we've got to start with China's side of the story. You see, this isn't just some friendly gesture. It's what looks like a desperate economic push. Beijing has some really compelling reasons for wanting India on its side, and it pretty much all boils down to one thing: trade. China's strategy here seems to have a few key parts. First, and this is the big one, they need access to India's enormous and fast-growing market. Second, they're pushing hard, and I mean really hard, to get India back into the RCEP. That's the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, this huge Asian trade bloc. And why? Well, they're worried about losing their top spot in trade, as companies all over the world start using a China Plus One strategy, which basically just means they're looking for another country to build their supply chains, not just China. And just to give you a sense of the scale here, the RCEP bloc already makes up a massive 30% of the entire global economy. But here's the catch. Without India, it's missing a key engine for growth. India's economy and its huge population would absolutely supercharge the whole thing, cementing China's influence over the entire region for years to come. Okay, so if China is so eager, you might be wondering, why isn't India jumping at the chance? Well, the answer really lies in a long history of deep-seated mistrust and, frankly, economic self-preservation. You really have to look back at the history to get why India is so cautious. They feel like they've been burned before. See, a trade agreement with China back in 2008 ended up really hurting local Indian industries. So with that memory fresh in their minds, Prime Minister Modi's government walked away from the RCEP deal in 2019, right at the last minute, declaring a new India First policy. And this was the absolute core reason. India was terrified that joining RCEP would just open the floodgates to a wave of cheap Chinese products, which would have completely wiped out its own small and medium-sized businesses. It's a concern that is just as real today as it was back then. But the biggest, most concrete obstacle in the way of any deal is a single, just staggering number. This is kind of the financial elephant in the room that you just cannot ignore. Over $100 billion. Let that sink in. That's the size of India's trade deficit with China. What that means is India buys over $100 billion more from China than it sells to them. It's a massive, totally one-sided economic relationship that India is, understandably, no longer willing to accept. So what does that imbalance actually look like in real life? Well, China basically floods the Indian market with low-cost, non-essential goods, things like toys, buckets, utensils. Meanwhile, India's high-value sectors, we're talking pharmaceuticals, IT services, technology, they are effectively blocked from the Chinese market. From India's point of view, it's a fundamentally unfair deal. So what's India's move? Instead of just waiting around for China to change, it's playing a whole new game on the global stage. It's actively out there building a network of alliances to make sure it's not dependent on any single country. Yeah, India is aggressively diversifying its trade partners. It's been on a signing spree, locking in deals with the UK, Australia, and the UAE. A deal with Russia is reportedly just around the corner, and talks with the entire European Union are in their final stages. The message here is crystal clear. India has plenty of other options. And this statement from the government really sums up their entire foreign policy right now. The core idea is what they call strategic autonomy. No more dependency, no more being pushed around. The absolute #1 priority is protecting India's national and economic interests. Period. So because of this newfound strength and all these diverse partnerships, India isn't just saying no anymore. Now it's actually dictating the terms. If China wants a deal, it's going to have to play by India's rules. So India has laid out a really clear list of non-negotiable demands. They're essentially saying, first, you have to fix that $100 billion trade deficit.
Second, you have to open your markets to our pharma and IT sectors. Third, stop dumping cheap goods into our country. Fourth, you need to agree to a phased transfer of technology. And finally, and this might be the biggest hurdle of all, you have to resolve the ongoing border tensions. Only then, India is saying, can we even start to talk.
When you put it all together, you can see these two completely opposing goals. China is playing for market access and regional influence, and it's using RCEP as its main play. India, on the other hand, is playing for independence and autonomy, using global partnerships and these strict conditions as its defense. It's a classic geopolitical chess match.
If there's one key idea driving every single thing we've talked about, it's this: strategic autonomy. This is the absolute core of India's foreign policy right now. It's the freedom to make choices that benefit India without being pushed into a corner by Washington, Beijing, or anyone else.
So, this all leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future. As India keeps growing its economy and building all these global partnerships, are we watching a fundamental power shift in real time? Is India becoming the new major player that superpowers like China now have to actively court for friendship and trade? You know, the tables certainly seem to be turning. Thanks for joining today's Explainer. If you found this interesting, let me know your thoughts below.